that very hour, some Pharisees came and said to him, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." He said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me, listen, I am casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work. Yet today, tomorrow, and the next day I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you. And I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" Here ends the reading. My life has very nearly spanned the progression of video games from Pong, Atari, Space Invaders, to games that today look so real it astonishes me. If you've ever walked into Best Buy and seen somebody playing the latest Madden NFL game, you could almost mistake it for an actual game being played. It looks that incredible. And of course, we all remember what Pong looks like. Two paddles moving like this in a green screen bouncing a white ball back and forth. So it's come a long way. A game that I played when I was young in school, and I think probably as a way for the schools to teach us how to use computers, was a game called Oregon Trail. And Oregon Trail, for those of us who grew up playing it, holds a special place in our heart, not because it was an especially wonderful game, or that it was a terribly interesting game, but just that it occupies that kind of seminal moment in my generation's life. Oregon Trail actually had very few graphics. It was less visually interesting than Pong, if you can believe it. It's mostly a word game, so occasionally little pictures would pop up on the screen. But what I found in playing this game, which as the name implies, was supposed to allow you to go from St. Louis, Missouri, out to the Oregon Trail and to the West Coast, what I found was that the game was impossible. It was impossible. Let me explain. You started in St. Louis, you made some simple decisions about when you wanted to leave on your journey. If you left too early, the rivers would still have snowmelt in them and they would be too high for you to cross in your wagon. If you left too late, the snow would fall. The point of all of this is to tell you that it seemed to me that every time I played the game, no matter the decisions I made about the journey was so dangerous that I always died. I would decide to ford the river, and my oxen would trip and break a leg, and we would die. We would get caught in the middle of the plains in a thunderstorm, get struck by lightning, and we would die. We would go hunting because we were about to run out of food. I wouldn't hit anything. We would run out of bullets, and I would die. Poor Lily. She always got yellow fever and gave it to everybody else, and we would die. This was my experience with this game. I don't know anyone who ever made it through the game. Journeys can be dangerous. What I found later as a history student is that these parties that left were very particular about who they took and matched skill sets well, so that hopefully, as we know, because people did make it to the West Coast, some of them survived. But we pick up, I tell you that story because we pick up with Jesus this morning at the beginning of his journey. A journey that was dangerous, every bit as dangerous as those who set out to cross great oceans to see what was on the other side, or those who climbed mountains because they were there, or those who traveled from St. Louis, Missouri, out west, across the plains and the Rockies to the Pacific Ocean. And Jesus in this passage is being warned specifically by the Pharisees, which is interesting, those who typically rooted for him to in fact die. He is warned by them that Herod is not pleased. He is warned that, in fact, Herod is considering doing away with Jesus, as he had done with so many of the other prophets who came. Jesus' reference to Jerusalem killing and stoning the prophets is because that is precisely what happened there. Prophets were fascinating when they were new and fresh and dewy. They were fascinating because people were looking for some entertainment. They were looking for them to speak truth to power. They rooted for the prophets to tell the principalities and powers what they had done wrong. But eventually, those powers and principalities got tired of listening to the prophets. They got tired of being told what they had done wrong. They got tired of being made to feel bad about how they were doing things, and so they did the most expeditious thing that they could. They killed them. They got rid of them. They blotted them out. And so Jesus is being warned, if you're not careful, this is exactly what will happen to you. Your journey is dangerous. Tread carefully. Make good decisions. Otherwise, bad things may happen to you. And Jesus' response is a bold one. He says, tell that sly fox that today I'm doing what I'm here to do. I'm healing. I'm preaching. I'm teaching. And tomorrow I will do the same, and then I will leave. And once I've left, I'm gone. I will continue to do what I have come here to do, no matter the consequences. That is what Jesus is saying. That's the message that he is sending to Herod. I have a purpose and a reason for being here, and I will see it through. And when I read those words, I'm encouraged because we, friends, have purpose and reason for being here. We are on a journey. We are on the Lenten journey, yes, but we are on the journey of Christian discipleship. From here to there. And that journey requires every bit of the preparation that those who took the Oregon Trail west, those who got onto sailing ships. It's not something to be entered into frivolously or on the spur of the moment or because it's Tuesday and you don't have anything better to do. It's serious business. And Jesus knew that. And for him, we know the story of what happens. Eventually, Herod catches up to him. Eventually, the Pharisees have their way. Eventually, Rome can no longer ignore this preacher and teacher, this prophet. And thank God that we do not live in a country that would persecute us in that same way. But it doesn't mean that our journey as Christians is less dangerous. It's still personally dangerous for us. Speaking the truth in love to those in a position of power above us is still dangerous. Telling those who ignore the least and the last and the lost that they're ignoring them is still dangerous. Doing what we are called to do by our baptism and by the power of the Holy Spirit is still dangerous. And so the hope for us, the grace for us in this passage comes at the end. When Jesus says, oh, the times that I have wanted to be a mother hen, to gather you in under my wings and protect you. You've seen chickens do this? Amazing. Mother hens will puff out their feathers and spread their wings. It's almost like you can't figure out how the bones unhinge to make this happen. And they will pull in the chicks, get them in close to protect them from threats, real or imagined. This is what Jesus says he will do for us. We are those chicks, friends. We are those soft, fluffy, defenseless beings. And so the good news is that on our journey, is dangerous, the journey where we have to make difficult decisions like whether or not to ford the stream, whether or not to go hunting, whether or not to press on in face of storms and bad weather and rough terrain, is that we don't do it alone. We don't do it without protection. We are not defenseless against those who would stop us, those who would like us to be quiet,